Hello, my name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and I want to talk about how an economy can thrive in a deflationary environment. Because a lot of times you'll have economists or economic thinkers sort of scoff at the idea of anything other than the status quo, which is currently money that's run by governments that typically print more money and cause inflation, basically erosion of the value of the currency on a real basis, meaning one unit of the currency is buying you less and less stuff. And not only do they scoff at any idea of questioning it, they actually think that the current system is great because of it gets people to spend more, because everything is always based on whether people spend more, because that's of course always the end goal, to get people to just burn through resources and just use up as much resources as possible as quickly as possible, because why not? So in an inflationary environment like we do now, where basically even if you have like a moderate level of inflation, let's say 2-3% a year, the fact that prices are constantly going up, the idea is that people aren't going to want to hold cash. People aren't going to want to save money because their savings keeps becoming worth less and less and less. So they're either going to be pushed to go spend the money, or they're going to be pushed to buy assets, okay, to go buy a house, to go buy stocks, to go buy, because those assets are constantly going up in value, while their savings is constantly going down in value if they just hold cash. And the idea is that this is a good thing, because it encourages that capital to move around instead of just staying in one place. And on top of it, people who incur a lot of debt will find that those debts will become less and less of a problem, because those debts are, like, let's say if you have $1,000 loan, that's in real nominal terms of $1,000. If that $1,000 becomes worth less and less in real terms, meaning it buys you less and less stuff because of inflation, that debt becomes easier to pay after a while. Which is the real reason why governments love inflation. Keeps their government debt in check. And then they say the opposite about deflation. Well, no one's going to want to buy stuff if prices keep going down, because they're like, well, why don't I just wait 6 months when it's cheaper? Okay? No one's going to want to borrow money because the value of their debts will just keep going up in value. So that $1,000 is going to become harder and harder to pay. So that's bad. An economy can't function this way. And I totally disagree. We see deflation in industries like the tech sector, and where basically things are constantly getting cheaper despite all the printing of money. Okay, so, and then how do people deal with it? Same thing with a car. The minute you drive a car off the lot, the prices dropped exponentially. But we still buy laptops and cars and things. One, because we need them, you know. I'm not going to wait 6 months for eggs because I think eggs may be cheaper 6 months from now. I'm going to buy eggs because I'm hungry now. But for things like cars and computers, what do a lot of people do? They lease. Okay, if you lease a car, that's way you're not paying for the car completely up front. What happens is that you get a new car, you pay the lease, you make your lease payments. In a couple of years, you can then release a newer model. Okay, instead of being stuck owning a model that's worth a fraction of what it was before. You'd probably see a lot more of that in a deflationary environment for all sorts of goods. There can also be subscription-based models, also relative contracts. Right now, we always do fixed dollar price contracts, where if I lend you money, I lend you $1,000. Okay, I lend you $1,000, and then you owe me $1,000. So in an inflationary environment, that works out for you because basically you're paying me a fixed amount, and that fixed amount is becoming worth less and less and less. In a deflationary environment, it may be more valuable to do variable contracts. Okay, that may be the only way to make it work. So people will do it. People will find ways to make things work. So instead of lending me $1,000, I'll say, I'm lending you the equivalent of buying an ounce of gold, let's say. So then what happens, that even though all you have to do is pay me back whatever the equivalent dollar amount to buy an ounce of gold 5 years later when the loan's due. So essentially, I'm still getting the same purchasing power back plus the equivalent interest based on the loan, but I'm not necessarily, your loan is not becoming worth more because it's still buying the same amount. So for example, if we did use Bitcoin to make loans, what we could do is say, I'm going to lend you, again, an ounce of gold's worth of Bitcoin. So that way, if Bitcoin keeps going up in value over the years, then what happens is we figure out what an ounce of gold is in Bitcoin a few years later, and that's what you pay back. And that makes life you can manage that. You can find ways to manage a deflationary environment. You would just change the different types of arrangements you have. It doesn't mean people are just going to sit down and be like, well, I can't do things the way I used to do them, so I'm just going to stop doing them altogether and let the world fall apart around me. Now, will there be people who are hurt because they over-leveraged themselves, assuming that the old way was always going to be the way things work? Yes, but that's why you want a free market. So that way, there's never just a period of deflation and just a period of inflation. That way, people don't overbet on things going one way or the other. When you have a free market, prices fluctuate. They move up and they move down. They don't just move up and they don't just move down. And this way people can always be planning for either situation, or always anticipate that things may not go one way or the other. This is what happened with housing. People just basically, government kept getting involved in the housing market for the last 100 years, and people got overly optimistic on the housing market. And the bubble got that much bigger because so many people underestimated the risk, because they just assumed that the market would always be as healthy as it has always been, because the government was always stoking the flame of the housing market. Same thing with an inflationary economy. Yes, the government can perpetuate this inflationary economy up to a point, but it's going to hurt that much more when that economy has to unwind into a deflationary environment, because everyone's bet on perpetual inflation. But vice versa, I wouldn't want a government that forces a constant deflationary environment either. Because if everyone plans for that, and assuming that's forever, there's going to be a cruel adjustment on the other way too. You want a free market that lets things fluctuate, so that way people don't overly place their bets on one side versus the other. There is certainty in uncertainty. Okay? And certainty and uncertainty makes everyone safer, because there is no such thing as certainty. And when government tries to create certainty, all you do is you create a temporary certainty that unwinds in very painful ways. My name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. If you enjoyed this video, share it with a friend, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and thank you very much.